Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another sesh where I've just realised I've left my phone over there. What was it? What do I call it? Ramblings of a Madman. Yes. Aptly named. Hope you're all doing well anyway. But let us jump almost right into it. But just one I was thinking of just a moment ago, so now, which is June 24, right this moment. So UBI is important. Got something attached to my finger. What is this? I think it's part of my headphone. Bloody hell. Everything's falling to bits. UBI is important for long-term stability because as protection against from AI in terms of job security, but also in terms of sustainability, because at the moment burning through resources can be framed as a positive as it creates jobs. UBI would negate this positive framing of a negative. Right. Hope that makes sense. Once again, I've left this late. Always do. Procrastinate. That rhymed. Hopefully the notes will be a little bit less bleak as compared to the previous video. I won't go back quite as far. Let's have a look at a random point in my notes. What have we got? This is also June, but June 2022 apparently. The problem with minimalism is that if most people adopt it, the war on the poor will continue. And what will those with more money than empathy do to continue draining time and energy from the poor if there's not much left to squeeze? Strategy of those with more resources / power, of course power is a resource, ensure houses remain unaffordable to most in order to keep people in debt, keep them forcibly subscribed to the system. And as I mentioned somewhere else, that's the end of that note, but if we're someone in power, someone who's benefiting from the system and who has a very or relatively small sphere of or circle of care, sphere of compassion, sphere of people that they care about, they will most likely want to maintain said system, and one of the ways to maintain said system is to try and drain as much time and energy out of people who aren't benefiting from the system, who would want the system to change, as possible without causing them to try and start a revolution, essentially. So there's a bit of a balancing act there between that dynamic, but that's essentially some people will have those interests. Speaking of, okay, that's a very short note. June 2022, it's kind of related, so I'll see what the other ones are, but it's psychopath in charge. I know I did write an article on WordPress which was something to do with that. Divert attention. So that's literally all the note said. I was probably going to write something more, but I got distracted. But yeah, diverting the attention is also a way of kind of trying to maintain the system. Divert people's attention, which essentially fulfills the function of reducing or draining their time and energy, because their time and energy, everyone has a limited amount of time and energy, and if it's spent on distractions, then that is good for those who benefit from the system and want to maintain it. Okay, so this is July 2022. In terms of position on the political spectrum, who are those that own the supply, demand the most, i.e., live the most consumptive lifestyles, and manipulate the demand of others due to owning the supply and wanting to supply more to make more profits? Because I want to vote for the people who have the opposite values to this. Also, people who do the above have a disproportionate amount of sway or influence in terms of how society develops, meaning they get to craft it more. Craft it sounds good, doesn't it? Maybe I should use different words. Manipulate it, maybe. Gotta think of word choices here. More towards their own image of or their own vision, but then again, vision's also positive, or has positive connotations. What? Image of what they want society to look like at the expense of other people's visions. I did use the word visions there at some point. Therefore, depriving others of the autonomy and freedom which is so needed to have a good quality of life. Obviously, that's a sense of autonomy and freedom, because, as I mentioned in other notes, I don't believe in free will, and therefore I think everything's inevitable, and therefore autonomy and freedom are merely illusions, which are quite nice illusions to have, at least. Lovely jubbly. But yeah, this relates to things like investment as well, which I'm pretty sure I've mentioned. If not, or if someone's watching this and haven't watched some of the other videos where I've mentioned it, investment is obviously, I say obviously, but yeah, it should be obvious, always used in positive terms, and therefore has developed positive connotations. But of course, investing is essentially dictating where other people can spend their time, which also dictates where they can't. So it's essentially a form of control over others. So I'm not much of a fan, although it's all relative, of course. But yeah, one of my goals is to try and ensure that passive income kind of mitigates depreciation, but not much more, because I don't want to have passive income. My early 20s version of myself would have been like, what are you on about? But if I could go back in time, I would give him a slap and be like, what are you on about? Alright, speaking of what we're on about, what am I on about right now? July 2022. Deprive people of freedom, or the sense of freedom and autonomy. At least to, well, I imagine that's supposed to be an arrow. At least to discontentment, which leads to consumptive coping mechanisms, which leads to profit, which leads to more concentration of power/resources, and therefore more deprivation of most people's freedom/autonomy. So that's kind of the vicious cycle there. World/society shaped, manipulated by those with concentrated power/wealth leads to more discontentment for the disempowered. Both supply and demand is manipulated by those with power. Current society. Hopefully in future it'll be freedom. Let's see what idea I had. Given to freedom and autonomy given to everyone in regards to their ability to vote / have or say in both general societal structure, so the macro structure, macro structure. So that would include not having first past the post as a voting system, because it's a load of crap and exists on the lower end of the spectrum of democracy. Oops. As well as at more communally, okay, the more micro structure. And at work, democracy of the workplace. And the removal of unnecessary / manufactured desperation through the implementation of UBI, and therefore the freedom to choose what we spend our time doing, rather than having a figurative gun pointed at our heads, with said gun being said manufactured desperation. Okay, cool. Now in earlier videos I mentioned that spend our time is like a capitalist influence phrase, but obviously I must not have thought about that back then, or if I did I just used it for convenience. So we live in the age of convenience, so why not embrace it? For many reasons. That is a lovely brew. Right, what we got here? July. Another one from July 2022. Depriving people of freedom in order that other people don't deprive them of even more, and then seeing this as a good thing is not the sign of a healthy system. So I guess just point out relativity then, as well as completely messing up typing this. There we go. Depriving people of freedom in order that other people don't deprive them of even more. Okay. Oppressing people in order that other people don't oppress them more, and then seeing this as a good thing is not the sign of a healthy system. And then for some reason I just put landlords and employers. Oops, employers, which are worklords. Now, obviously, relativity means that this is better than... So, depriving people of freedom is better than having other people that deprive even more freedom. But is there not something even better? The dynamic of freedom is quite interesting. Because obviously, if we're free to... If we are granted... That's one of the negatives or potential cons of UBI. If we're granted the ability to spend money or more money on products and services, then we deprive other people of their time and energy because they might not want to spend that time and energy, once again using the capitalist term phrase there, pandering to our lifestyles. So essentially our freedom then kind of curtails their freedom. So how much freedom should we is reasonable to curtail, shall we say? I feel very warm right now. Okay, so going back in time a month, June 2022. Cows, pigs, and sheep, and that are basically just dogs and cats in disguise. The reason they're not kept as pets by most people, some people do have them as pets, of course, is because they're less convenient. Speaking about the age of convenience, this is quite convenient. But this is the next note that we happen to pick. Than cats or dogs due to space/munch requirements. I don't want to pay someone to kill them just because they're less convenient to love. Obviously, that's not the only reason they're not kept as pets, though. There's the old cultural traditions and all those fun things. Because some people, we love ourselves a tradition, don't we? We love keeping some things the same for no other reason than that's what we've done for a long period of time. So it's a little bit of a different note topic compared to the ones that we just had, but there we are. So it's June 2022 as well. We could be living in a pretty paradisical rather than parasitical world. UBI and democracy in the workplace. This looks like it's note form, I think. Well, they're all kind of note form. Changing values towards sustainability and away from more/excess/constant exponential growth. Increased sphere of compassion, which is the circle of care, which includes reasonable contribution/consumption relative to a person's capabilities/capacity, and the latter relative to other people's contentment the ecosystem's capabilities. Related to consumption, recycling humans, leather/whatever other useful parts, obviously with consent and obviously with the correct spelling. Although it's important to break free of the profit incentive/competing kingdom paradigm before doing this. Otherwise, some of the less scrupulous king/queens, referring to employers here, may worklords may combine human recycling with profit to deleterious effects. But yeah, it's just, I guess, just pointing out the fact that we're extremely wasteful with our own kind of physical insert correct word here. But yeah, we're super wasteful with kind of what happens to us after we're gone. We just either burn them or burn the bodies or bury them and waste loads of space. So I think a lot more useful things can be done. Obviously we can sign up for, donating organs and whatnot, which is good. But yeah, I mean, some people might be uncomfortable with having human leather clothes made of human leather. Or who knows? Maybe I don't know. Maybe our skin's not. I'm not an expert on leather. Maybe our skin's just not made for it. Tell that to. I'll start doing that. Jeepers Creepers. Anyway, just little notes. Just less waste. I just happened to focus in on that particular example. What have we got? More from June 2022. Who knows what this is going to be about? Main problems. Consumption. No. Consumption. Contribution. Let's try and guess what I'm trying to write. Word, because even I don't know. Sphere of compassion. That's the circle of care. Aspirations to consume more. I guess encouraged / I'll add encouraged / facilitated aspirations to consume more. Because the more we consume to a point, the more respect we garner from others who are into that kind of thing. And again, encouraged / facilitated aspirations that entail the reduction / deprivation of other people's freedom and self-worth. Basically referring to the same thing really with consumption. And also power, as previously mentioned. Celebrations and worship of those who consume the most, and also who tend to have a lot of power and therefore deprive others of freedom and autonomy, or the sense of. Denigrations of those who consume the most. Okay, I think I'm talking about if we were to denigrate a certain subgroup of the population, i.e. even those who consume the most, then that can facilitate them basically forming a clique and then rejecting the opinion of the people who are denigrating them. I imagine that's what I meant by that. Obviously, it's been a few years since I wrote this. Celebrations / worship. Oops. Of those who deprive. What time am I on? 20 minutes. Deprive others of freedom / self-worth. Denigrations of those who deprive others of freedom / self-worth. Lack of recognition of chained will, the philosophy of chill, and the language of chill, which, as previously mentioned, well, not in this video, but is the kind of recognition and an attempted avoidance of using definitive stereotypical labels, which fall into the identity trap, or that overemphasize a particular aspect of a person, which tends to be negative, although not always. Negative competition, encouraging consumption through hierarchy, coping mechanisms for the lack of autonomy / freedom / attack on self-worth. Encouraging anger, depression, irritability, / hate, etc. through hierarchy and the disparity in freedom and other resources that brings. As a general rule of thumb, disparity in resources tends to destabilize society. Although there's other things as well, of course. Like, people could have a lot of resources and still have an ideology which has kind of a superiority complex baked in, which could cause conflict. So it's not just resources, although you could say that's kind of some kind of cognitive resource. Those that shape society the most are those that seek lots of power, money and possessions, whilst also tending to be those that consume the most. Therefore, those that most determine how society develops are among those that most deprive others of freedom and self-worth. Those lower shape. Those lower down the socio-economic spectrum. Bloody hyphens. Are then infused into this top-down hierarchical model of consumptive aspirations / coping mechanisms. It makes sense then that mental health problems and symptoms, aka, whoop, can't spell it, are on the rise, as well. Okay, missed the word that. As well as the potential existential threat of biological, ecological degradation / destruction. I'm getting ahead of myself here, because anyone not near the top of said spectrum is inherently, implicitly and repeatedly, I missed a L there, and repeatedly told that their self-worth is subpar relative to those who are higher up, and more consumption is one of the main and encouraged, since it generates more profits, mechanisms for trying to resolve the systemic attack on self-worth. And that's the end of that note, and I think I'll end the video here, because otherwise, well, we're approaching half an hour and I don't want to make them too long. So hope you've got a rest of your day. Hopefully that made sense. Do let us know if anything didn't or needs further clarification. But yeah, take care of yourself, guys, and catch you soon. Peace.